that reality is like, yes, you should have work-life balance. Also, you need to be working your ass off.
The more fun that you're having with it, the longer you can keep yourself going. And that's ultimately what's going to really increase your chances of making it work. Super excited to be back with you, James. It's been almost a year since you were on the pod last.
Yeah, now I have a 1-year-old. Things are much different.
Yeah, you had like I think 1 month old or 2 month old last time we recorded.
Yeah.
And, the endless
a lot changes in a year.
Yeah, the inexorable march of time. Here we are.
Yeah, it's a lot to keep up with and try to balance with. We were talking about this beforehand. 2 working parents working full time and trying to balance taking care of a 1-year-old who's now walking, running, climbing, and getting into all sorts of stuff.
So she just turned 1, right?
May 18th. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. There's like this. So I've got 2 kids. I've got a 3-year-old daughter and a 1-year-old son. And my son is just getting to that point where like he's restless enough that I can't really take him on walks in the stroller anymore. And for me, that's like a heartbreaking moment.
Yeah.
Because the like 45-minute long walk in the stroller with my podcast is like one of my favorite parts of the day. And it's about to come to an end again.
Interesting. I haven't thought about that, but that would be pretty bad for us too. We're doing, I don't know if you've heard of 75 hard. It's we're not quite doing like what it is, but it's meant to be a plan of working out and eating and I guess just mainly those 2 things on a regular basis. And so what we're doing is 60 minutes of exercise a day, which could just be walking. So a good portion of our exercise is out walking, and then having some sort of like meal plan or like whatever for diet that you pay attention to. And anyway, same for me. I go on 20, 30, 45-minute walks with her and listen to my podcast, or my wife and I are walking together. And to miss out on that would be really tough if we weren't able to take her with us.
Yeah. With my daughter, it was like she started walking and I like couldn't take her on walks anymore. With my son, it's been a lot better. Like he's only just started to get restless, and he's like 15, 16 months now. So he's been walking for like, I don't know, 4 months or so.
Yeah.
3 months or so. And so I'm hoping I can stretch it out a little longer with him. But I mean, I'm sure it depends on the kid.
Yeah. Yeah. We already are doing more of her walking around when we go into restaurants and that sort of stuff. She's hard to contain into one space.
Well, I hope it lasts. That is a rough moment.
Yeah.
Are you planning on more, or is it a one and done situation?
We don't know. There's possibility either way. I mean, as you know, as other parents know, it's a lot. It's a responsibility. We also are, I don't know if selfish is the appropriate word, but we love having time to do the things that we really enjoy. We love to travel. We love to play sports. We love to exercise. We love to do all that stuff. And we've done a lot of that so far with Jamie, our daughter. So she's been on 5, 6, 7 plane trips, taking her to Europe this summer in a couple of weeks, which is exciting. She comes to our soccer games and sits on the sideline, and people help watch her, or we rotate who plays or whatever. So we're still thinking about it. We're open to it. But like I said, we also really enjoy just having time to do the stuff that we've always enjoyed, and being able to combine that with one kid is hard enough, and multiple after that is obviously infinitely more difficult. So we'll see.
Yeah, I feel that. So with our second, it is mostly just like, I don't know, twice as hard.
Yeah.
People are like, oh, there's like, you get to reuse the car seat and stuff. But like, the reality for us has just been that like, when you have one kid, it's like, okay, wife's watching the kid. I get to live my life.
Right.
Right. I'm watching the kid. She gets to live her life. You can have this nice like trade off. With 2 kids, that can happen a little bit, but like watching 2 kids can be really hard.
Yeah. More likely, so a lot of times it's each of you watching one.
We both watch a kid.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so that could be rough. Have you seen the movie Idiocracy?
No, I haven't.
So just as you were describing this, like, because I'm the same way, like very selfish about my time and my life. We've got 2 kids. We're planning on hopefully just one more and then being done. But the premise of the movie, like in the introduction, is well off, like upper middle class people stop having as many kids for exactly these reasons, because they realize like it's hard, and we want to be responsible, and like we'd rather have fewer kids and like send them to college and stuff like that. But then like the I don't know the nice way to put it, but like the less educated portion of the population just starts having like crazy amounts of kids.
Oh, they're like,
so
we'll take
over
care
the
of this.
next like 3,000 years, like evolution, runs its course, and the IQ of the human population has dropped like 40 points or 50 points.
Oh, interesting.
It's a really funny, it's a comedy.
Yeah. Okay. I'll have
but
to
just
check
as
that
you were
out.
saying that, I was like, maybe this, like, if we fast forward 1,000 years, maybe this is
where we'll be. Yeah. That's funny.
Cool. Well, I really brought you on because you're an incredible developer. You're very influential online, and people loved your last episode. And so I wanted to, let's talk about some tech stuff.
Yeah, absolutely.
I saw that you're doing this new project. I know it's like relatively new, although I have heard about it before. Can you tell me a little bit about the Deals for Devs site that you're building?
Yeah. I like going back to high school, Black Friday was a really big deal. Like I used to go with some of my friends at like 4 or 5 in the morning and like wait in line for Target or Best Buy to open. There was one year I got there at like 11 o'clock at night and we spent like 4 or 5 hours outside waiting to get in at 5 o'clock in the morning. And mostly it's for like a cheap TV. So it's not the, like after you do it once, you don't necessarily need another TV, but it was always just such a fun experience. And I think just a lot of us are really interested in the idea of getting good value for less money than it would have naturally costed. So anyway, on YouTube for the past 2 years, I believe, I've done a video just like highlighting Black Friday deals for developers. And this is just, you see people posted on Twitter, people's newsletters that I have, and you just put them together and say, hey, you could get this course for 50% off on Black Friday. Wes Boss has talked about this with his courses. I don't know what exact discount he does, but there's some really high percentage of his sales that come from Black Friday. Like outside of the month after launching a course, Black Friday is where he gets the majority of his sales after, which is really, really interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. No, Black Friday pops off for sure.
Yeah. And it's, I don't know, there's something, maybe other people enjoy it as much as I do, but so I did those videos and I thought like, why don't I was working with a couple of partners, Xata being one for database. I've since kind of worked with and still working with Sentry and really enjoying that. And I was like, well, why don't I just build something and kind of build a list of deals? And so I started to do that 8 months ago or whatever for Black Friday of 2023. And I did it. I didn't have any tracking. I didn't have any metrics at all. I had no idea how much traffic I was getting. Like, I mean, this was just like throwing it together, basically like a YouTube demo. And here it is. And then interesting thing happened. Jesse Hall, Code Stacker on YouTube channel, has a VS Code course, and he submitted a deal for his course, and he included my affiliate link. And I didn't know this. Like, I didn't ask him to do it, but I had an affiliate link for his course in the past. And it was like 5, 6, 7 days in a row, and I was getting like 5, 10, 15, 20 sales from this affiliate link. And it's not like this is a ton of money, but it had me thinking like this is actually getting traffic. People are actually coming here. And I was really kind of blown away because I had no idea. So I thought, like, why don't I just dive deeper, try to build this into a much bigger thing, paid a designer to completely redesign the entire thing, started to work on it, was integrating this with partner relationships with Sentry and Xata, which is a ton of fun to work with both of them and have them be a part of it. And then an interesting thing happened. I met with Chris Wicks at that conference in Austin back in January. And he was looking to get some like more hands-on experience, real world experience programming, because he's trying to break into getting his first job. And so he wanted to work on it with me. And then he kind of told a couple of other people. And then so we ended up creating, like, we have a Discord channel in the Learn, Build, Teach Discord for people that are interested in participating, creating issues, giving feedback, etc. And it's kind of grown into a bigger community involvement thing. So there's the technical challenge of like just building the thing, which is a lot of fun. Then there's also, from my perspective, like kind of treating this much more as an open source project than it is just a project that's hosted on GitHub, like trying to have issues. And I'm still not the best at this, but like having a flow for how do we do branches and pull requests and that sort of stuff. So anyway, it's been a ton of fun. We're officially kind of launching the new first version of this in the next couple of days. And this will hopefully continue to grow and be around again for Black Friday this coming year. And hopefully go on for years after. We'll see.
Well, I'm selfishly excited about it, obviously, because we're gonna put a boot dev link on there, with a nice deal. But I'm also just interested in it. I'm kind of like a like a business nerd. Where I grew up, one of the most profitable businesses, I don't know if I should say that because I'm actually not sure, but at least externally, it seemed to be. And like, it would be crazy to me if it wasn't one of the most profitable businesses in my local community, because my entire life, like as long as I can remember, this business was up and running, and I believe it's still running today. I grew up in this town in southern Utah. It's a 2 Walmart town. I don't know if that helps you, like, you know, picture how big it is.
2 Walmarts.
Yeah. Like I always have a hard time when people give me the number of people in a town because I don't know what that means, but it's got 2 Walmarts, 1 Costco.
That's the real test, is Costco. But
yeah, how many Costcos are in the greater area? Called Dixie Direct. So it was this local business, and they actually sold a product. It was a little coupon book. It started little. It seemed like every year it got a little bigger, but they just had amazing execution, which is why I'm like excited about this project. Because I think if you execute on it well, it's actually an incredible, like it provide incredible value to people and be a great little business. They were very strict about like the deals in here are actually good, right? Like we're not putting in little like 5% off, like, you know, clearly just like a local business kind of getting some free marketing. Like, no, these are actually good deals. And it was local stuff. So when you bought the book, it was like, well, you know, I eat out, I don't know, if I eat out 15 times in a year, I'll get my value back because there's coupons in here for like every local, you know, local store.
Yeah.
And it's like, I'm going there anyway. And so people loved these things. Like people would buy multiples of these books and they would last for 1 year. So like all the coupons in the book were just like 1 calendar year. And so you'd buy your like new edition every year. Oh. And the book itself cost $35. And you sucked at using coupons if you weren't getting at least $200 or $300 of value out of the book per year. And they also did crazy stuff like they like worked with schools, so schools would sell Dixie Direct books as fundraisers just because everyone in the community loved them. And so I don't know. I feel like if it's done well, this idea could really have some legs.
Yeah, there's kind of some open questions that you didn't ask that would be interesting to touch on a little bit. One is like you talked about the really like high quality deals, and how you quantify that is arbitrary, right? Like anyone can kind of make a decision on what that is. And we don't have much in the way of restricting that now, with the exception of, and this is an interesting thing with user generated content, is you can't trust anything that users generate. So a lot of the demo things that I've built recently, they have an admin dashboard where you submit and then I approve. And then maybe I add like another 1 or 2 people that can go and approve too. So we do have that mechanism of like, you can submit a deal. I have a dashboard that we want to add a lot of features to from an admin perspective. We can go in and approve those deals. And we don't even have like CRUD, the ability to edit those deals in the dashboard yet. It's very minimal, just like yes or no on a deal. And then if I want to tweak it, I have to go to the database. So there's features to add for that. But we had that first round of not gatekeeping, but just validation of this is appropriate. But we don't have any like further restriction of like a certain amount of percentage off or anything like that. So that's something that I think right now it's building content. So there's actually, or creating the deal content. So there's actually stuff for people to see when they get there. And then based on feedback, we'll kind of iterate on, do we need to do any further restriction, or like what sort of additional properties would people want to know about deals? One thing I want to add is like the ability to deselect the end dates. You can have just an ongoing deal. We don't have that yet, but that is something I think that naturally makes sense. Also, maybe have the ability to do markdown in the description. So like as you submit, you could potentially do something a little fancier with some of your details, and then have a property for further instructions or special instructions if there's something specific that you have to do to like get the deal or whatever. And then there's like, what if a deal only lasts for like 5 people? Then what happens? Because we don't have any direct integration like with the platform. So how do you create like a reporting system? Like people can say, hey, this deal is no longer available, send us a notification and we can go update, etc. There's a million different things that we can do that'll be a lot of fun to kind of iterate on in the next however long.
If you find that a lot of the sites putting deals on Deals for Devs are Stripe hosted, like for their payments, you can build a Stripe plugin. And like, you would only want to do this if like a lot of people are using Stripe. But like, for example, I'm using Stripe. And so I use Stripe's UI to build out my coupon codes and stuff. And from what I understand of how Stripe plugins work, it could be pretty simple to build a little plugin that, like, say I would install into my Stripe account and like be like, okay, this is the coupon code. This is just a coupon code for deals for devs, right? Checkbox, and like it syncs to deals for devs.
That would be super cool.
Yeah, potentially interesting. I don't know, where everyone's hosted for their payments, but
well, that's definitely part of the challenge is people are hosting things all over the place. So some people may have Stripe integration, some people may not. And there's the potential, like long term, maybe we create our own API to do certain things, and you can submit deals through an API instead of having to go through the form. You could have something automatically scrape your own site to submit to us. We could have something that could scrape different sites to look for deals and automatically populate those. There's, like I said, a million different things that we can do. We'll see what we end up doing, but hopefully it's guided by like feedback and just how people are using the site and what they're looking for.
We're definitely going to nerd about some entrepreneurial stuff, I think, now that we're into this, because I'm all excited now. I think this is a really cool idea. I think one of the biggest challenges, if I had to predict for you, will be that this is a two-sided marketplace, and it's like it's famously one of the hardest kind of businesses to get off the ground. Once you get it off the ground, it's one of the best businesses to run, because like you just have to maintain the platform, right? And then you've got like users that provide the content, right? Businesses adding coupons, making sure their deals are up to date, like all that stuff. You don't have to like pay to do that in-house. And then on the other side of the marketplace, of course, you have developers coming to the site for deals. So from like an entrepreneurial, like starting a business standpoint, it's like the hardest one to get the crank going as far as business model goes. But once you get it going, like it's, tends to be a little stickier. So I guess my question to you is like, have you thought about how you're going to approach this problem? Because the typical problem with the two-sided marketplace is like, okay, until the website has traffic, it's hard to go get all of the, people that are going to put coupons onto the site. It's like, what's the selling point of like me taking time to go do it? And then on the other side, right, if there's no good coupons, like who's going to come to the site to look at coupons? Have you thought about this a ton?
Yeah. The advantage I think that I have is from last year, I kind of posted about this. This is a much smaller thing at the time and got 30, 40 deals. Again, I was surprised how many got submitted. I also have so many relationships in the community where I imagine the process being a higher percentage, more manual early on, and that kind of decreasing if this becomes more successful, whatever success looks like. So an example of that is like me posting on Twitter to say, and this is where you reach out to me, but I said like, hey, we're starting to build the content. Who's got a deal? And in that, I didn't submit or send the actual form. It's actually at a staging link right now because the real page is not live. But I am DMing people, if they want to, they could submit through the form that we have. But I'm also taking some stuff and doing it manually. And I just expect that to be the case. It's not where I want to spend my time, right? Like that's not the thing I really want to do. But if we have people that are contributing in like our Discord channel, people that are looking for ways to contribute that maybe don't have as much time to do code, like they could be people that can go and add deals as they come across it. Because so many of us have newsletters that we follow, tweets that we see, et cetera. Like that content is out there. So I think part of it's definitely going to be manual. I think the ideal use case is we get to a point where companies are asking us or searching for a way to promote on our site. And so I think about the traffic we had last year with basically no visibility into what it was and very little marketing. I think about how big of an opportunity Black Friday is. And I think about how do you stay engaged with people. So on the site, we have a subscribe for the newsletter. And so in theory, this is going to be a work in progress. In theory, what the newsletter will be is a curated list of deals based on your preferences every month. So if you say you're specifically looking for courses and not or video courses and not ebooks, okay, well, here's like the courses that are new this month for you to check out. Mm-hmm. And just having people sign up for a newsletter, I think you probably have spent a lot of time thinking about for course platform and anything else that you've done is your touch point to stay in touch with them. And so I think that's a big part of it. I think making a really big splash on Black Friday will help build that kind of core audience that then maintaining that and providing the value through relevant and useful deals is the key.
I agree. There's a couple things you mentioned there. So the first thing you said was kind of regarding this idea of getting the two-sided marketplace off the ground. And the way I would kind of phrase your response was like, you kind of have this unfair advantage, which sounds like I'm like saying something bad, but I'm not. Like, this is like how businesses talk about this stuff. Like, you have this unfair advantage in the sense that, I mean, you know me, you know everyone, right? People. You know Danny Thompson, you know the Prime Agent, like, you know all these people online that are involved with tech. And so it's going to, it would be a lot harder to start this type of a business if you didn't know a ton of people in the industry that you could just DM and like ask for a coupon code to their stuff, right?
Yes, absolutely. I would say that's a huge advantage. And there was, a list of people that submitted deals last October that I just DM'd to say, hey, would you be willing to do it again? And the other advantage I have is because of my brand and my YouTube channel specifically, companies are reaching out to me all the time to be able to promote stuff. Yeah. And one in particular, View School, they've particularly wanted to drive more of an affiliate type thing and kind of share awesome deals that they have. And one, the deals are really good. And one kind of odd thing that may not seem like a big deal is it's kind of stressful for me when companies reach out to do affiliate links, because mostly what that means is I have to figure out the messaging, I have to figure out the why, I have to figure out where to promote it and how, I have to actually go and create the tweet or whatever it is. I have to figure out what their platform is to track it. I have to remember the affiliate links. Like, there's all these really tiny things that in my mind like overwhelm me, and it just makes me not want to do it because affiliate marketing often doesn't work that well. But with Deals for Devs, one of the idea, there's some details in here to talk about, is to have more affiliates and have that be the funnel for how I do affiliate marketing through Deals for Devs. That way I'm not having to stress about how and where and blah, blah, blah. I know it'll be Deals for Devs. This is what a thing looks like. Here's how you can promote. And eventually we can turn that into paid, like sponsor, like featured things by sponsor. Like if you want to pay a couple $100 and be listed on the site, if I can prove that you'll make a couple $100 plus X dollars, right? Like that's an investment that you'll probably take. So that's more the long-term goal as well. But back to your original point, like, yes, there's an advantage that I have in particular of knowing a lot of content creators and people, content creators and brands that could benefit or just help me out by creating deals to list on the site.
So you'd mentioned that you're doing a lot of manual stuff right now, right? You're manually reaching out to people, kind of manually putting some of the coupon codes maybe in your database rather than having all of the companies go use a form on the website. And then obviously you want to automate that. One thing that I've found, and I hope that this kind of, I don't know, just insight or way of thinking about starting a business will resonate with some of our listeners, is that doing things manually from a business perspective is really not that bad. In fact, I would argue a lot of times it's actually really good counterintuitively, especially to us as engineers, because we really don't want to do it, right? Like we're so used to automating like every little part of our process, right? Like go use the form on the website, don't do it manually. One thing that helped me the most growing Boot Dev was for a very long time, up until just a couple weeks ago. So there's 9 of us full time on the platform now. But up until just a couple weeks ago, we manually did onboarding calls with any students that wanted them. And the way we did this just by sending an automated email that was like, hey, would you like to talk to us about Boot Dev, and kind of, we can kind of introduce you to the platform, and you can tell us a little bit about your experience. We can tell you like what courses we have that might be useful to you. And not only did that like really help the students that were signing up, right? Because they kind of got to know the people that were behind the site. They got to get a few of their questions answered. But we learned like an insane amount about what we should be doing differently by just having those manual conversations. So like when I hear you saying like, I'm going to be doing it manually for a while, I actually think like that could be one of the best things that you could be doing, for some amount of time until you have like a really, really solid idea of what the site should actually look like. Because I do think there's going to be some questions that, around like, you use the word gatekeeping, but I would say it's more like curation, right? Like how much curation should happen with the coupon codes. Because I know that like myself, I probably wouldn't, it is different because like Dixie Direct, this like physical coupon book had to be quite curated because there's no search feature, right? Like they just put the best stuff at the front of the book and it kind of got worse until the back. And then by the back of the book, like they, were cutting things out because they just didn't want to make the book that large. On a site, you could probably be a little bit more lenient if the search features are good. But I know that like I want to hit the site and see the best deals. Like, where's the free shit, right? Where's the like 50% off shit? Like, that's what I'm thinking as a developer, I imagine.
Yeah. I think the interesting thing, I think the big difference of the manual stuff that I'm talking about and the manual stuff you're talking about is you actually were able to get that feedback from people, and it goes both ways, right? Because developer advocacy is something I've spent the majority of my career doing. And from that perspective, as the advocate, and on the outsider's perspective of potentially working with an advocate or someone from a team, blah, 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 when you have that personal connection, you're so much more likely to actually use the thing. Like, you're so much more likely. I know if I have a problem with all these brands and stuff that I work with, this is selfish, but I don't have to go to their open forum page and hope that someone responds. I can go and talk to them. And that makes an infinite world of difference. And so I think you're able to get a little bit more, probably insights, probably loyalty, probably whatever you want to call it, out of those conversations. And maybe that's a little bit of the back and forward that I can have and like, hey, send me details and then I'll help influence a little bit. I think the big thing with automation is just to not build too much too early to make sure that there's the use case. So like I could work on a scraper to go and get some stuff somewhere. Who knows? I don't know if that's the thing that is the best use of time. If
scrape Groupon or something.
It could be anything. And so I mentioned the admin dashboard, like the admin dashboard for approving deals. It's yes or no. I have no ability to edit deals from my admin dashboard at all. And I've now recognized that pain point of someone submitted a deal. And I mentioned the limitation of we don't have the ability to choose an open end date. Well, if people submitted a deal by default, it like defaults that to a week from now. So now if I need to go change it, I have to go to the database directly to change it. So I actually have, another use case is if you don't have a coupon code, you don't have to submit it. It could just be a built-in, like this thing is 50% off for the next week and no coupon code necessary. But some people have submitted inside of that field, like N/A, like not applicable or whatever. And then in the UI, it shows up as like the coupon code is NA, and I have this component that is a clickable, a copyable coupon code component, which means you click it, it copies it. So it's copying NA to the thing.
Copying NA, that's so good.
Mm-hmm. So like that is already starting to influence what are the features that we need. And those specific ones go back to like, I definitively need a way to do edits to data from an admin perspective, because I could go in and wipe that out as soon as I see it on the site.
Yeah. That makes a ton of sense, especially the features. It's almost like building features around doing it manually, right? It's like, that for the first little while, you're going to have to be editing a bunch of crap manually because you're gonna get new use cases. Like you said, some people want to use coupon codes. Other sites, like the deal's just built in. Maybe it's a link rather than a coupon code. I don't know. So making it easier to manage it manually makes a lot of sense, especially if I'm guessing like some of those admin features are probably like just a couple hours of work.
Yeah, I think there's definitely a lot of value that you can add pretty quickly. Absolutely.
All right. Well, I'm excited about that. It's dealsfordevs.com. Right.
Yep. Dealsfordevs.com.
Can people find deals right now, or should we tell them about some timing?
So depending on when this gets released, the new version of the site right this second, the site is just like sign up for the newsletter. The new version of the site will be launched on this coming Thursday, which is 3 days away, and at that point there will be deals live on the site. And really quickly, one other thing you mentioned, which could be a whole different conversation that we don't have to have. You mentioned search. I will give a shout out to their partner sponsor, to be transparent, but I love working with them, and it's Xata as a database, and they're a service on top of Postgres. One of the things they do is provide search for you out of the box. Behind the scenes, they replicate data to Elasticsearch and then gives you in their SDK literally just like database table dot search, and you can determine fuzziness and priorities and which columns you're searching on. So we actually do have a search feature that will be available at launch in a couple of days, where you can type in Astro and it will use that search to go and search by name and description for anything that includes Astro and some level of fuzziness around that as well. And I think that's super cool because they do all the hard work for you. You just literally use their SDK to trigger it.
Okay, I'm pulling up Xata. That's pretty cool. I basically my entire career as a backend developer has been working with Postgres and Elasticsearch.
Oh, there you go.
The company I was at for like the longest amount of time, our primary data store, because it was like a big analytics, like searchable thing, was Elasticsearch. Yep. And I really liked working with it. It was a little bit different of a use case, because this is like replicate my data from Postgres to Elasticsearch, make it searchable, right? Yep. And frankly, that's actually, from my understanding, like that's actually the more popular use case of Elasticsearch. We were using it, we were doing a little hacky thing with it. It was like our primary data store for a certain slice of our data.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
And then you could associate back to the record in Postgres for like the other things that you needed.
Yeah, exactly. So like we kept most of our application logic in Postgres, because most of our application logic was or I should say most of our application data was quite small, have like 10,000 users and like they're, organized into orgs or whatever. But then Elasticsearch held the social media data. So like comments, likes, posts, that kind of stuff. And we just associated it all back with IDs, but then that lived in Elasticsearch and it was this big distributed cluster.
Makes sense.
So,
but yeah, Xata,
very cool.
Xata is pretty cool. And just one other thing on them, they were like, have all these APIs on top of Postgres, and they didn't enable direct Postgres access. Now they have. So they are becoming more of like work with it as Postgres as you would any other Postgres. And then they have these other features on top of that, including search and including file storage and a few other things. So
okay, so it's also hosted Postgres then, like you.
Yes, it is hosted. Yeah.
One of my pain points with a lot of these services is that at the moment we happen to be hosting in Google Cloud, and the primary reason for that is we use Kubernetes, and Kubernetes on Google Cloud is just like better than Kubernetes anywhere else. Like there's just no comparison.
Yeah.
AWS's managed Kubernetes was always like several versions behind, and it didn't have nearly as many features. Like Google just launched like Kubernetes Autopilot, which is pretty cool. But like the problem is all of these new like SaaS companies that host something for you have all started on AWS for obvious reasons. And so like can't use it. Do you happen to know, like, do they host their databases only in AWS? Do they let you pick a cloud provider or region? Are you familiar with how that works?
So I don't remember an option. I am fairly certain it's all AWS. I am also fairly certain that they don't have an option when you create a database. I'm 99% sure this doesn't exist, to choose a hosting provider when you create the database. They do have some region stuff available. And another part of that answer too is they are still a relatively new company. Like I started working with them a year or two ago, which is kind of hard to believe. And they've done such cool stuff in that time. And especially now this migration to accessing more of the underlying Postgres, I think you'll probably see more of the things that you're asking about and expect going forward. This is not me speaking on behalf of them, but a lot of their tools, they're kind of open sourcing to be on their own. So they have database branching and zero downtime migrations, that sort of stuff. So those are going to be things that sit on top of Postgres that are open source and available for people. So then you look more at, you could potentially use those with your Postgres that's hosted anywhere. But there's obviously some features that come with doing it in Xata or by Xata.
No, that's cool. I feel like I'm out here living as a second-class citizen on Google Cloud sometimes, and just like my domains are getting moved to Squarespace because Google does that. And like, just like, what am I doing?
Google saga. Yeah.
I hope that Google Cloud has a resurgence, a turnaround, because it really does feel like the web is becoming more and more monolithic on AWS, which, not that like Google is this benevolent underdog or anything like that, but it would be nice to have options.
Yeah, it really is. Like if people were to invest in learning about a cloud platform, like I think AWS has to be the one, unless it's just your like unless you're specifically Microsoft shop at your company or you specifically do stuff in Google Cloud, like if you don't have a direct association with one, I think you just have to, because so many services you find out behind the scenes are built on top of AWS. And very rarely have I come across a service that I've used or been interested in, and they're like, yeah, we host everything on Google Cloud, which is, it's an interesting thing, but it is like pretty prevalent in so many services that are doing some sort of abstraction to provide value to developers and anybody else that's leveraging it.
Okay, here's my hot take on that. I've done almost nothing with Azure. I logged into Azure once, felt really gross, and logged out, and then haven't. Yeah. I felt like I was logging into like Outlook or something. It was weird.
Yeah.
Didn't like. But I've done a lot with Google Cloud and AWS. And my hot take is that unless you're like selling yourself as like, you know, Adam Elmore, AWS hero, like I know like so much about like the internals of AWS and how it works and all the gotchas and the foot guns. Unless you're like really selling yourself as like this like crazy like expert senior level, I don't think there's that big of a difference. So like when beginners come to me and they're like, should I learn AWS or Google? My response is usually like, you should learn the basics, the primitives of either one. And the reality is any product that your projects will require as an application level web developer, Google and Amazon are going to have pretty one-to-one projects, right? You've got Compute Engine, you've got EC2, right? You've got managed Kubernetes, you got managed Kubernetes, you got managed RDS, you've got Google Cloud SQL. Like for the most part, it's pretty even. So like, I don't know. I always tell beginners not to stress about it too much. If you go work at a company that uses Google, you shouldn't feel left behind that you're not like using AWS day to day.
This is a whole rant that I have that I'm super passionate about. It matches exactly what you're saying. I think the huge takeaway for people, and I actually have a recent YouTube short that talked about like, you shouldn't be learning one JavaScript framework if we go to like front end, but same general idea. And the reason is you should learn one, but you should not be learning that framework. You should be learning what the things are that it does for you and problems that it solves. And you should be understanding those concepts so that inevitably when you have to go from React to Vue or any other framework, you at least have an idea of what a framework is doing for you, and you can translate use cases and benefits and things to another one and you already have a head start. You're not starting from scratch. The syntax is different, and that's really it. And I think the same is true for hosting providers. I think what I usually tell people from a JavaScript framework perspective is like, it really doesn't matter. Pay attention to like the higher level things, make sure you understand concepts. But the caveat for me is you should be doing your research and backtrack from your research of what is the most hireable. And that potentially depends on like your area or the type of job that you're looking for, et cetera. And go and do your research, everyone. But my guess is there's a vast majority of jobs that are going to say AWS experience versus Google Cloud or Azure. But if you're in one of those areas where it's a very .NET, Microsoft stack heavy area, absolutely go and do that thing. Like go and do the thing that's going to lead you to the job or whatever that next step is for you, and use the research to influence that, but understand the concepts and know that when you get an interview and they ask you if you use Vue and you never have, you could say no, but I've used React and I understand this concept. I can draw parallels and show you that I have an understanding of what's going on, even if I don't have the specific experience with that hosting provider, framework, etc.
Yes. If I go to an interview today and I'm asked if I know, I don't know, let's say, I mean, I guess I have used React. That's a bad example. Solid. Let's say Solid. I go to an interview like, Lane, have you used Solid? Solid Start. My answer is not no. Even though that's correct. Right? But like my answer is not no, because that's awkward. That ends the conversation, right? They can't tell. There's no information conveyed to the interviewer that's different from like a very junior developer that has literally never heard of Solid Start, right? I've certainly heard of Solid, right? I know who Ryan Carniato is. Like I get some of this stuff, and I know that like signals are very similar to what's going on with Vue, right? When you create a ref in Vue, it's like very similar idea to signals. So my answer wouldn't be no, even though that is correct. My answer would be something like, Well, I've done a lot of Vue. My understanding is that Solid's very well known for signals. It's very similar to how refs work in Vue 3. Ryan Carniato seems really smart. I've seen a lot of his content, seen a lot of his posts on Twitter. There's ways that you can answer these questions, even though you haven't explicitly used the thing, if you've used other similar things and you know the landscape, right? So by doing some projects in Google Cloud or doing some projects in AWS, and you show up at an interview that is requiring the other thing, there's ways that you can answer the questions that convey to the interviewer that they should have confidence in your abilities, even if it's not just a simple, yes, I've done that.
Absolutely. And by the way, even if the answer is yes, it shouldn't just be yes. Like it should be yes conversation. It should be talking about the thing. And the same goes for no. And I think it's whether you actually use the phrase no or not. I think the important part of what you're saying is to have the conversation. I think it takes a lot of confidence also to say no in interviews, because most people think, oh, I don't have this experience. They freak out in their head like, oh, they're going to judge me for it. I think one of the worst things you can do is say yes and lie and make something up. Because if I see you explain something to me and it's not correct and you're doing it with all the confidence in the world, that you've lost all trust. Versus if you said, no, I think it does this, but I'm not exactly sure. But to your point, I have used this and this is how that works. That's 100% a much better answer. But it takes confidence to actually be able to do that, because a lot of people just think, if I don't have this direct experience, I'm screwed. But that's not the case. You have to work on being able to tell your story, being able to make connections, make parallels, and bring your experience to the table to be able to show what you have and how it's relevant to what they're looking for.
Yeah. This is a really important idea. People that listen to this pod have probably heard me talk about it a couple times now, but I like to reiterate it every few episodes because I think I'm really passionate about it. Not to name drop too hard, but this last weekend, I was at Big Sky DevCon in Montana. Like it's,
nice.
It was a pretty big deal. And I'm not going to say that I'm one of the cool kids, but I was hanging out at a table with Sam Selikoff and the Primogen. So again, anyways, but this actually was the topic of conversation. At least for a moment, we were talking about the idea of when you're learning to code, when you're coming up as a web developer, how far down the layers of abstraction should you go? And at least my take was you should be going at least 1 or 2 levels down from where you plan to be spending your time in your job. So like you said, to your point, you're doing Vue, right? Well, I think you should be pretty damn solid on JavaScript, and you should even be pretty damn solid on browser APIs, right? Even if your framework's abstracted most of that stuff away from you, stuff's going to go wrong. Questions are going to come up in interviews. If you can understand stuff at a slightly lower level, you'll be better off in the job, but also in the interview for when questions come up that are slightly outside of your domain. At least you'll be able to have, like you said, that conversation about it.
That's a specific quote. Shoot, I'm blanking on his name, and it's such a big name. Scott Hanselman. Hopefully he didn't watch that and take it personally. I've heard Scott Hanselman say specifically the exact same thing about 1 level deeper than where you're going to spend your time.
Yeah, I think it's great. And like I said, I actually used to say 1 level. I've never heard, if I stole this from Scott without realizing it, I apologize. I've never heard Scott say it. I actually think I stole it from Bill Kennedy, who also, who knows, maybe stole it from Scott. It's a great idea.
Yeah. Yes,
going 1 level deeper. But I actually, and I like to caveat it and say 1 or 2, because I actually think that the layers down that you go in your mind should be unbounded.
Yeah.
Right. You're doing this depth first search through the knowledge of the programming world, and you're never going to get it all, but you have some amount of resources. And my take is basically if you're having fun and you want to have an amazing career, you shouldn't just stop arbitrarily because gone far enough, right? If you're interested and you want to go deeper, that will only help.
I think the following of interest, and I love to use passion. There's conversations about passion should be required for a job in tech, and I think that's true. But I also think my motto is I'm always going to be more excited if I'm doing stuff that I'm passionate about. I think people make the differentiation of it's okay to get into tech because it makes good money. I absolutely agree. I want to make as much money as I can, but I also am working every day to do more of the things that I love doing. And conveniently in tech, there's a way to do that and make good money. And I think that's the thing that I advocate for. But Having the excitement, I think, counts a lot. And not that I'm telling people to go spend a ton of time outside of their regular 9 to 5 doing meetups or YouTube videos or side projects or whatever. But if that's the kind of thing that you enjoy that much to do it outside of, that's pretty cool. Also, make sure work-life balance, family time, make sure those things are priorities, because those are a big thing for me. But if you find yourself where this is the thing that you would spend your free time doing and you can get paid for it, that's amazing.
You brought up this interesting idea, because I hear it a lot. And to be honest, I heard it a lot more when interest rates were really low. This is one of those ZERPs, in my opinion. But it's this idea of like, what should... should is the operative word. It almost brings like ethics and morals to the table with the conversation. Like, what should you have to do to get into tech? And there were a lot of opinions flying around. Like you said, you shouldn't have to work outside of 9 to 5, or you shouldn't have to be passionate. It should be, you should be able to just have it as a job. My take is that I don't know, and that I don't really have too much of an opinion on the ethics of it. I'm mostly interested in the conversation around what's the reality today?
Yeah.
And the reality today is that, like it or not, you're competing with people who are passionate about it, right? So I'm not going to gatekeep and say you shouldn't be able to get into tech if you're not passionate about it, or you shouldn't be able to do it if you're not having fun. But you just have to go in with eyes wide open, knowing that there are some subset of developers out there looking for the same jobs as you that are really into this stuff and just love it. And you're going to have to outcompete them in some capacity. Doesn't mean you need to be better than all of them, right? You can land a job at some company. There's lots of opportunities out there, but I do think it's important to recognize there is a market, and the market changes, and at the end of the day, you are competing with other developers. And if you can get yourself to love it, I love it inherently, but if you could get yourself to love it, you'll just have a better time.
Yeah. I don't think there's really a way to answer what should you have to do to get into tech. So I personally would leave that aside as well. I would go the route of what is the reality? And I'm on the exact same page of I can advocate for work-life balance and time with my family. That's always been a huge priority for me, more so than people I've been around. And I've noticed that difference. And sometimes that held me back a little bit, to be honest, but that was the thing that was my priority. But I also have worked a ton I've taught 2 boot camps. I do a lot with entry-level developers. We have a lot of entry-level developers in the community, and Learn, Build, Teach Discord, people that are looking for their first job. And the reality is, getting that first job, especially if you don't have the computer science background, is very challenging. And so that reality is yes, you should have work-life balance. Also, you need to be working your ass off to build the skills, to get the experience, to do the things that you need to do to put yourself in the best position to get that first job, especially. And Danny Thompson rants about this. He always hated how people would emphasize how difficult the first job is, because I think he interpreted that and felt like people interpreted it like it was impossible. I just want to be realistic and say there's a significant challenge, but also at the end of that challenge is the opening up of the world to you in terms of opportunities, if you know how to continue to pursue those and kind of navigate your career into those next steps beyond that first job. But it's hard. And the even more difficult reality, and I think this is partially what you're alluding to when you mentioned interest rates, which, by the way, we moved to a new house and have a much higher interest rate, and our goal is to pay it off as soon as we can, for what it's worth. But interest rates are this way because of the economy, and the reality right now in 2024, 2023, especially, layoffs are happening over and over again, and it doesn't seem like they're stopping anytime soon. And every other week I see another company or another friend that's being let go from a company that I know of. And so what that means is there's that many more people that are now looking for jobs that may have already been super, super talented. So now you're competing with them. And this means as people are cutting back, there's less overall jobs. So I also want to acknowledge specifically the state of the economy makes this a lot more difficult conversation as well. And unfortunately, that is the reality that we're in right now.
I do want to provide a little bit of a ray of hope. I have noticed, both anecdotally and in the data, that the layoffs have slowed down significantly compared to 2022 and 2023, going into 2024. So we've just had a lot more students in our Discord talking about how they just got a job or that they're getting interviews, that they're getting responded to. And like, I'm checking the charts on layoffs.fyi. Like, yes, there have been layoffs, but like when you compare them to beginning of 2023 or beginning of 2022, it's like a quarter the amount. So there's definitely, I think a lot of people are hopeful going into 2024, and I think that's great. I still think, like you said, you got to work your ass off. If you can find things that you're passionate about to build, that's going to use the like cringy startup phrase, that's going to like elongate your runway, right? Like, you only have, my experience of watching people get into tech is that like they have some amount of motivation and it depletes over time, right? But the more fun that you're having with it, the longer you can keep yourself going. And that's ultimately what's going to really increase your chances of making it work, is like, are you enjoying yourself? Are you having a good time? Can you keep doing it on the side of whatever you're doing currently as you work towards a job? I think working on those things helps.
That's actually good context to know. I think from what I've seen, I would have guessed that it has slowed down. Like first few months of 2024, it was just back to back, like bang, bang, bang. So it is good to know. I also I'm giving a talk on this, by the way, at Render at the end of the week. Like,
oh, cool.
How to maximize your potential in tech interviews, not technical interviews, like not whiteboarding, but just interviews in tech, and talk a lot about the state of where we are, et cetera, and how different things to put yourself in the best position to be successful. So I may come back and kind of reference some of the updated graphs that you mentioned.
Yeah, you definitely should. I'm looking at employees laid off, and at least according to layoffs.fyi, like for example, January 2024, it's saying employees laid off 34,000. January is always a spike, by the way. But January of 2023 was 89,000. So from 89,000 down to 34,000, but it's actually even tapered off faster. Like, for example, in May of 2024, only a little less than 10,000 were logged. So I don't know.
So far in June, I guess we're still pretty early in June. But yeah, it's good.
Yeah, we're pretty early in June, but it is nice to see it coming down a little bit.
Good context to have. I will say also, I feel like a lot of friends that have been laid off have found something relatively quickly. So it also is really interesting how many people are laying off. And then you see other companies, not to be super specific, although I will a little bit, like PlanetScale did layoffs. This is who I used to work for. It's who I was let go from. And the reason I do content full time now, almost 2 years now, which is crazy. But they did a big layoff and had some details that people should go and read about if they want to, that were kind of icky. But Clerk ended up hiring, I don't know what the number is, but Clerk hired like 5 or 6 of those people, all super, super talented. Oh, wow. So it is interesting, the balance of like seeing people get let go at a certain company and then also seeing other companies that are hiring seemingly a lot. So it's an interesting balance.
Yeah. And when you're talented, like there tends to be a market for you. I'm going to tell a story. I think Aaron will be perfectly fine with this, and but I'll just give a preface of like, Aaron Francis is incredible. He was on the podcast, I don't know, 30 episodes back when he was working at PlanetScale, and all this information is public, so it should be totally fine. Love Aaron. He got laid off from PlanetScale. This was now like
a few months ago.
A few months
February,
ago. It was like
March,
end of the year last year.
I think
or maybe even early this year.
But yeah, anyway,
time moves so fast.
I know. Yeah.
Okay. Anyways, he got laid off, and he made like a big post about it on Twitter, saying, "Hey, I've been laid off. I'm looking for new stuff. Send opportunities my way." It was a great post, and he got so much support. This tweet like blew up, as it should, because he's incredible. And the thing that was funny to me was there were a lot of comments from Twitter users that I didn't know, just because I haven't interacted with them before, that were like giving condolences and stuff, which is like, it's good. Sad that he got laid off, but in the back of my mind, I'm going like, this guy is going to have like absolutely no trouble. Like he's probably going to, if not like go work at a company where he's earning even more and doing even better, do something on his own. And he ended up, I think, actually going full time on his own stuff. And like that stuff seems to, at least from the outside, be going well. So I just thought that was kind of cool that like, he got laid off. It was super sad, but he's going to do absolutely fantastic. Actually,
that's actually very similar to my story, but very, very similar. And ironically, from the exact same company. I did a similar post right after I got let go and said like, hey, got let go, looking for opportunities and blah, blah, blah. And I mean, it was just flooded with DMs. And I I love to bring this up. I think from one perspective, this could seem like braggy or whatever, but I think it's really important as somebody with an audience and someone that spent so much time in the community to show people what the impact of that was. So in one of the hardest moments of my career, for the exact same reason that you just mentioned, it wasn't that hard because I knew I had plenty of opportunities of places to go. And this is because I had spent so much time in the community. I had an audience creating content. I provided value to the community and I showed up in a genuine way, exactly like Aaron has. And people believed in that. And that meant the world to me, and also just dramatically changed how I was able to look at that time and able to make the decision to go full time for myself. So Aaron and I have kind of joked about that, like going through that exact same journey. And he is so talented. He will obviously do really amazing things as a content creator. But that is why we talk about networking, and I don't like the word networking. I rephrase it to investing in your community, just showing up, just be places, like be on Twitter, be at a meetup, be at a conference, like be in the place where the people are that do the thing that you do or you want to do. Just show up and be there. And but you talk about like the idea of a network. You don't build your network when you need it. You start building your network for when you need it, and you will at some point or multiple points in your career. And so if people out there, like if you're comfortable, if you have a good job and you feel good and you feel like there's nothing you need to do, you never know. So you might as well start investing a little bit of energy into the community and showing up in places and start to kind of build some of those relationships, because you never know when you might really need to leverage and lean on those.
You and Aaron are a great example of people that have huge networks, are great, talented engineers, and this is the important part, have audiences. I just want to add a point that anyone listening to this, the audience part is not like, it's not necessary. Mm-hmm. Does it help? Absolutely. No. Is it necessary? No. I also have a lot of examples of friends I know personally from past companies who are very talented engineers that know other talented engineers at just other companies in the local area, right? Or just companies anywhere, right? And their stories are very similar in that, they got laid off. They're very talented. They have friends who know they're very talented that happen to be working at other companies and they can help out. So it's like all of these things are true, but I also just want to, I can already hear like the YouTube comments like, yeah, but he has like 50,000 followers on Twitter. I get that. It does help, not saying it doesn't, but like you can have this network without an audience. Like your network doesn't need to be thousands of people. It can just be 10 or 20 or 30 that you've interacted with and worked for in the past that are willing to be like, oh yeah, that person's actually good and I like working with that person, right? And that goes a long way.
Absolutely. Yeah. I love that clarification. I think everything is also relative, right? So if you can always find somebody that has more followers than you. You can always find someone that makes more money than you. You can always find somebody with a bigger house. Like all these things are completely relative. And to call that out for everybody listening, I think is huge. And if you think about like what I was able to, like DMs that I was able to get that people sent me based on like audience size and other things, I don't know how to phrase this in a not weird way. Like that was much more than I needed to feel comfortable. So like you just look at that at a different scale. And like if you show up to a meetup in your local area on a regular basis and meet developers at companies in your area, those 5 or 10 people that know you really well, to your point, like that could be the thing. And so regardless of what it is, you don't have to have a goal of building an audience. You don't have to have a goal of creating content. I think content creation is a hack. Like I encourage people, it is something you should think about because the benefits of it have really shown themselves for a lot of people, but it's not something you have to do at all. But just showing up in some capacity, earning trust, providing value to the community, whatever those connections are, come back into play when you need to lean on that.
That is a great segue into the final thing I wanted to bring up with you for us to chat about is your idea surrounding these interviews that you want to do kind of in person. Can you tell me a little bit about the Developers of the World project?
Yeah, this is brand new. It's just been in my head for a while, and it's not something that I've like talked about publicly until now, ironically. But we'll talk about this a lot more. I've always loved all the videos where people go and do just conversations with people on the street. I've always loved that. Like Humans in New York is a specific example. This has been around for a long time. They go around on the streets in New York and just interview people. They have a website, they have a book. It's just so cool. It goes beyond what do you do. It gets a little bit more existential and a little bit deeper of a conversation. Another one that I really like is Vic Blends. So he does TikTok, Instagram, and he goes through Atlanta and he gives people free haircuts on the street. And what he does, he just asks them like, hey, can I give you a free haircut? And then they have these like really deep conversations. And it's just so like moving and interesting and just so cool. I've always been, I would say I'm super extroverted, except for I hate being around people, not specifically that I don't like, but that I don't have a relationship or a depth of conversation with. I hate small talk. I don't want to waste my time talking to people, but I love having deeper, more meaningful conversations to get to know people. So anyway, I have had this idea that I honestly haven't executed very well of like going to all these events and conferences, like just doing interviews with people and aggregating that into a set of data and like a set of videos and insights potentially. And I'm now kind of formalizing this. My wife and I did a day trip to Nashville, which is 3 hours there and 3 hours back yesterday for a baby shower, and talks a lot about this idea that I've had for a long time, which is developers of the world. And it's more or less a copy and at a high level of Humans of New York, but it's developers of the world. And so what this will be is doing interviews with people at the events that I go to, asking them some basic questions like you would probably expect. And then also going like, what is your passion? Like, why did you get into tech? Like a little bit deeper. Someone actually asked me at an event I was at Saturday, what is your meaning in life? And usually people don't do this. Like that was such an out there question for someone that I barely knew. But then we had this conversation that I loved, and I want to drive those conversations and use it to provide value back, entertainment, I think, and also value back to the community. And so one of those questions would be like, what's your best piece of advice for someone to look to break into tech? And you can envision like a website where we aggregate all the answers to that questions and add things like, generate transcripts from it, add search on the transcript. So you could go and search and find relevant things to whatever you're interested in, or just scroll on TikTok or Instagram or wherever. So anyway, I think this is going to be a concentration of a lot of my different efforts into one place. And there'll be two sides. There'll be like the building of infrastructure, whatever that looks like. I don't fully know, the website, et cetera. And then the actual going and meeting people and interviewing them and getting, just conversations with people all across the world, developers specifically. So I've been thinking about it for a long time, starting to formalize it a little bit, and hopefully in the next couple of months I'll have something to show for it.
Sweet. Well, I'm excited. So that one's not out yet. For everyone listening, and James, correct me if I'm wrong, we got dealsfordevs.com.
Yep.
You can go check that out now. As James said, it'll be up in a few days from recording, but this podcast actually won't go up for a few weeks, so it should be up by then. Definitely go check that out. James, you're just James Q Quick everywhere, right? YouTube, Twitter, all the places.
Yeah, that's the benefit of throwing in that middle initial. I can be the same
James
on everything.
Q-Quick.
Yeah.
I mean, James Quick is usually enough, but
it is, except for the professional football player who played at Louisville in college, went to the NFL. And if you I may overtake that SEO wise now, I'm not sure. But especially at a time, I was not first on the list if you just search James Quick.
You're number in my SERP, because Google personalizes, but in my search engine results page, you're number 3 and you're number 5. He takes spots 1, 2. Sorry, he takes spots number 1, 2, and 4.
So if you then change that to James Q Quick, I am pretty dominant. So
there you go. Very good. Go find James. Also, we name dropped Danny Thompson on this podcast. I have still not had him on yet. If you know him, go bother him. Tell him to come on. Been trying to get Danny on. He's a busy guy. So, anyways,
I'll send him
thanks for coming on, James.
Yeah. Thanks for having me back.